Hi, this is Everett, Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom. Now we're going to do another fun with watercolor painting. And today I'm going to use some different tools than I've used before. I'm going to start out with the natural sponge. Then I'm going to add with a dot spray bottle with watercolor. And then finally I'm going to introduce what was stencil film that I'm going to use to block out some of the whites. We'll see how we use that in this painting. So I want you to paint along with me, and I will show you how I paint lilacs. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click the bell to be notified of my next video, and share with your friends. So right now let's go over to the painting table and let's get started. Okay, I've got the paper laid out here horizontally in format, and the reason I did that is so that I'm going to follow the photograph exactly. Here I'm mixing up the first color. I'm going to do the blue lilac, mixing up a little Peacock blue, which is a beautiful color, and it's going to be very bright color. The natural sponge is something that's I'm right now putting in water. Make sure it's moist. Put it in a bucket of water. Look at that texture already. I can see the shapes that it's going to form. Now dip that into the palette. You pick up the paint. And I'm going to transfer that sponge sharp points and shapes onto the paper. Now the drawing that I did a design drawing from the photograph, and now I'm using the design drawing as my guide. I really don't have to look at the photograph because my drawing shows me where I need to put the color. The texture, I'm getting the idea from the photograph of the texture of the flower. So I'm locating the sponge, I'm moving it in different directions, different pressure. Sometimes I'll press it down lightly, pick up more paint, and I'll pick it up, and I'll press hard here. Other places lighter. I move the sponge around so I get a different looking mark. And I fill in a space that I've drawn out. I like that peacock blue, it's beautiful, beautiful color. Now let me pick this up and let you take a closer look at what it looks like up close. I'll pull it up to the camera, and you can see the sponge marks, different shapes, different values. Now here's a fun part. This stencil film is this is a piece of stencil film that I've used in another painting. And once you cut one out with different kinds of shapes with an X-Acto knife or a pair of scissors, you can use that shape over and over again. Here I'm going to match that shape to this red portion of the flowers. So I find an area that looks. In my design drawing, I drew the line and design. Now I'm trying to find a shape that would fit that particular curves and angles. And I found a spot that pretty well matches up what I want to do. And artist tape. I'm going to use that to, I'm going to tape this down so it doesn't go anywhere. I don't want the stencil to move while I'm doing the next phase. Also down at the bottom I see a place there I got to put a little bit of part of the drawing. I see a little piece that's part of a leaf, so I'm going to mask that in with a piece of tape to cover that up. So the stencil film will cover up the white paper so that I don't get any paint on the areas I don't want paint. I pick up another piece of stencil film and some pieces of watercolor paper, anything to mask out those areas you don't want the paint to fall. You could use a towel or a piece of cloth. Now we use a dot spray bottle with Watercolor. This is going to be for that red flower. And I'll go over the palette here and do a little test spraying. Shake it up real nice. I'm going to spray to get a little dot pattern. Then I go over to it and I hold it about 3 or 4 inches from the surface of the paper, and a light touch, light tapping motion on the bottle gives me a nice dot pattern. Now the next bottle will have just plain water in it. Now I'm going to hold that bottle up a little bit higher and spray down on top, and now that will disperse those dots into different kinds of shapes. A variety of shapes and sizes. Now that I've done, I'm going to have to let this dry a little bit, because that paint is real wet now, so I got to let that section dry. So give it some drying time. Now the next phase, there's that light flower. I'm going to use, it's different colors of gray, so I'm going to start out with a light green, a green number 1. So I'm going to mix that up. I'm going to maybe put some other colors in with that. There's a little bit of yellow ochre, but lots of water, because I want that. I need to get that paint real thin. So there's a little bit of cerulean, blue. It's going to be a mixture of colors. Now I got to pick up some water. I need to make that really light. So adding water to the watercolor lightens it up. I'm going to load the brush. I'm going to go over and paint that area. That's the lighter flower. And I'm putting in some texture here. I'm really painting in little shadow areas in that particular white. It's really a white flower, but I'm really just adding in some of the shadow areas. Little parts of the flower are in shadow. I continue to mark it up with the round brush. Now, so far I've used the sponge, I've used the spray bottle, and a round brush. Here I'll put a little bit of opera and mix in that little mixer. Again, another color, vary the color. Going back in with a round brush. Again, putting in some shadow marks, little dots and dashes. Some areas are a little bit darker now, so add a little darker paint here and there. Okay, continue to add more paint. Okay, now I'm mixing darker colors for the leaf. And there's a variety of blues, a little peacock blue, and a little bit of cerulean blues, a variety of blues. That's the dark color. And then add in some hooker green. Hooker's green and blue will give me a nice dark blue and a nice dark green. And I'm mixing that with a flat brush. That's a 1/2 inch natural hair flat brush. And alongside of that, I'm also going to mix some light colors. And this will be a light color. I'm mixing light color green here with yellow, lemon, green number 1. That mixture gives me a nice light green color. And I'm using a round brush here, mixing that up. So I'm going to paint the leaves. So I start with the flat brush, and I'm going to do part of the leaf with the flat brush. Again, I have a design on the paper. I'm following my design of where that shape is, using the corner of the brush, the edge of the brush. I'll pick up the round brush, and I paint in the lighter color. This gives me a variety of color on that one section, the light and the dark. The mixture of that light green and dark green gives me a nice variation of color and value. Again, I'm going to follow the design I have on the paper. I drew out the sketch, and I'm just following my sketch. Again, I'm putting the dark value on one edge, then picking up the brush with the light value green, adding that to that same shape. Now I'll continue to do this throughout the rest of the painting on all the leaves that I have drawn in. And if you're painting along, you want to go ahead and watch me do each one, because there's quite a few leaves on here. And if you're not painting along, you want to see the rest of the painting, you can go ahead and move ahead if you want to see the next section. But I'll keep this going regular speed so you can take your time and paint along and do the same things I'm doing. I've designed the leaves to be different sizes and a little different shape. The photograph gave me some ideas and some references, but I came up with my own size and shapes of those particular leaves. A variety of shapes and sizes. That makes the painting more interesting. I've got different directions of which way the leaves are pointing. And by putting in these light and dark colors, it gives a variety of value and a variety of color throughout all the leaves. And the little tight spots, I use the corner of the flat brush to cover those tight spots. The flat brush does a very good job with a sharp edge. And finish it off with a round brush with a light color. And when the paint is still wet there, you can see the paint blending very nicely, the light and the dark mixing together. Now continue on with the leaf pattern. And here's another leaf that's a different size, a different shape. Use the same procedure here, a dark color mixed in with a light color. A different shape, different direction, a little different size. Even the small little shapes, like a little flower, or next to a little flower, it'll be a nice little leaf shape. They all fit in there. And this one's pointing in a different direction, a little different size. If you're painting along with me, take your time. This is something that you can follow step by step. Using two brushes makes it easier here because I have one color in one brush and the second color in the second brush. It makes it a lot easier to paint. And you want to do that with a subject like this, so you don't want the same colors repeated over and over again in the same fashion. You want to have a variety of ways of putting it down. And if you also notice, I'm also focusing on how much of the dark and light I'm putting in. Some leaves I've got more dark than light, and in some leaves I've got more light than dark. So again, a variety of how I painted each leaf. So this is a good exercise to make sure you paint in variety, even as common subjects such as a leaf. Make them all different. And these leaves up here at the top are a little bit smaller. It won't take as much time, but still, you got to have the same color composition as the other leaves because they're all the same variety. And just check it over. And now it's ready to start putting in some of the stems. So I'm mixing a little bit of burnt sienna down here at the bottom of my palette, and I'm going to use the greens that are already mixed on the palette itself. So burnt sienna and green mix is going to be my colors I'm going to use, and I'm going to use a liner brush to do the painting on the primary. Put the green in first, the blue-green. You can see the nice fine line you can get with that liner brush. Gives you a nice sharp texture. Now on top of that, pick up the burnt sienna. I go in there and touch that green in certain places. Again, that gives a variety of color even in the stem. So it's not all one color all the way through. Now here I have a little bit of artistic license here of putting in different shapes, making sure I have a different size, a different angle. And that liner brush really works a nice job on getting a nice fine line. And going back and adding a little bit of burnt sienna on top of that, again, to vary the color, a little variety of color, even on the stems. I'm always conscious of trying to make each mark a little different size, a different shape, a different direction. A little bit of continuity here, that leaf there, and then you have a line that goes through, it connects somewhere else. So again, a little bit of continuity, then adding a little bit of burnt sienna on top. Again, a little variety of color on even that little section. Now continue on and make more stems. Now this particular stem here is partially hidden, so I'm only going to do a very light stroke to indicate that there's a stem, but it's partially hidden behind the flower. Again, a little variety in how I'm painting this particular section. And connecting each side together as it would be. The stem connected to the leaves. I go back and just a little bit of burnt sienna, a little bit of brown on top of that green, give a little variety of color, a little touch here and there to give it that variety of shapes and colors. I could add in some more stems up here to connect these leaves. Again, using a liner brush with a very fine point, Gives me a nice fine line. Making sure my shapes are different shapes, different angle, a variety of size. Now I'm just checking my color combination to make sure I have a little variety of color, even on that one little area. Okay, there's still a few more details I want to add to this painting. What I'm doing here is I'm mixing some of that color in the particular flower grouping, in this blue. And what I'm going in here, I was putting a little darker color in here, and I'm trying to just indicate some of the shape of that flower. And you only have to do this in a couple places. And once you do it in a couple places, that defines enough for the eye to interpret that particular flower. So this lilac has little shapes inside the flower itself. So I'm painting in some of those little shapes, a little bit of detail, just to indicate that. The eye will pick that up. I relate this to a point that when I'm doing something like a brick house or brick or something, you can just only paint it 3 or 4 bricks and you know the rest of the house has bricks. Well, here if I paint 1 or 2 little sections that define the flower, then it defines the flower. It paints the flower. Your eyes will make up the rest of the shape. So with a round brush with the same color, in this case it's a little peacock blue, I'm going in there and I'm painting those shapes, little shadow patterns inside the middle of the flower. And I'll study the photograph a little bit there to get some of those shapes in mind before I went ahead and painted here. So the photograph came in handy to get some detail. But again, I'm not using the photograph to paint from. I'm just using it as a reference, getting the idea of some of the structure and some of the shapes that are present. Now you want to take your time here. Don't want to rush this, just adding a little more detail. The danger here is to overdo, so you want to eliminate too much detail. You want to do just enough, just in certain places. Take your time. Okay, I'm just about ready to finish that one up. Just want to add a few more little brush marks, little dots and dashes. Little definition. Now I'm going to move to the red flower or the pink flower, in this case using the opera paint. Here again I'm going to just pick out an area and add in some more detail. Again, I'm just trying to replicate, looking at the photograph a little bit, getting a little idea of a design, trying to pick out an area for a little more design in those little dots, trying to make out a little shape. Not too much, but just a little indicator using the same color on top of it. Again, put a few little dots and dashes for a little more definition. Don't want to take away from that original painting that I put down. That's the real beauty of the using a dot spray bottle or the sponge, is to leave the original marks down there. Just enhance them a little bit. Now going back to that white section, again adding a little darker places, again a little definition. If I worked in one area, I'm going to work in all the areas. I don't isolate to one place. If you work on one section, you want to work on all sections. So I give a little more dash, a little darker areas, show a little more definition. Okay, that's a completed painting. I really like how it turned out. That's my lilacs. I hope you enjoyed that. I did. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and sign up so you can be aware of my next video. So bye for now.